everybody, my name is Rachel and welcome to my weekly wrap-up of December 20th, 2015. If you celebrate Christmas, Merry Christmas! I can't believe Christmas is in 5 days and my vacation starts in 2 days on Wednesday. Wednesday is the first day of my vacation. I am so looking forward to it. I am feeling a little depressed that I have to go back to work on Monday. I'm not going to think about that right now. But I did manage to finish a bunch of books on Friday night and on Saturday, and it turns out that I read 5 things this past week, so I better get started and do this as quickly as possible. The first thing that I finished this week was this very short book by Karen Lord called Redemption and Indigo, and I'm just going to say right now that I put off reading this book for an entire year because I thought it was going to be a depressing story about a woman escaping her abusive husband. I would like to say, for the record, I was so wrong about everything about this book. Apparently I didn't read the blurb all that well when I added it to my 2015 reading list last December. This is what the book is actually about. A woman named Pama leaves her husband because although she is a fantastic cook and she enjoys cooking, her husband is an absolute glutton. He's not a bad guy. He just has issues, and he's eating his feelings instead of dealing with them. She can't deal with it, she leaves him. Everybody around her supports her. Her husband is a bit of a laughingstock. He eventually comes after her, kind of begging her to come home. There are a series of hilarious incidents involving her husband. I laughed while reading this. And then the Undying Ones, this is based on a Senegalese folktale. The Undying Ones, also called the Jombi, decide after watching all of these events to give Pama the chaos stick from the god or spirit named Chance. Chance has not quite been doing his duties properly, and by giving his chaos stick to Pama, who is a natural at using it, and then having Chance get it back from her, everyone sort of learns a lesson. I loved this book. I loved how it felt like a real folktale. I loved the writing style. It was kind of conversational, kind of folktale-y, and had a narrator who directly addressed you as the reader, which I know as a sort of a thing breaking the fourth wall that some people don't like. I happen to really enjoy it in stories like this. I wouldn't want to read too much of it, but it just fit this so well, I thought. So I need to read more things by Karen Lord. The second thing that I finished this week was the only disappointment of the week, and that was Updraft by Fran Wilde. I did finish this. I probably should not have, because clearly it is not the kind of story that I enjoy reading anymore. Updraft is set, it's like in a fantasy world. It's a world where everybody lives on these towers made of bone, and the bone is alive. They are constantly growing upwards above the clouds, and everybody travels in between the towers using wings. It's just a really cool world building. I never heard of something quite like it, and they have a society built around trying to survive in these towers that are constantly growing, and they have a sect of the population called the Singers who are responsible for defending the towers, keeping the towers running. They enforce the laws of society. A young woman named Kirit is trying to pass her flying test. Her mother is a very well-known trader in between the towers, and Kirit wants to be her apprentice once she can fly on her own. But at the beginning of the story, Kirit makes a mistake. She pisses some people off, and then she is told by a singer that she must join the Singers instead of being a traitor, and then the singer proceeds to take away all of her choices to force her into being a singer, even though she doesn't want to do that. She takes the test, you can probably predict what happens, and then everything falls apart, and Kirit discovers the truths of her society and must help bring down the man or whatever. I'm trying not to be too sarcastic about this book. I thought the story, the plot, was incredibly uninspired, and the characters could have saved this, except that I didn't really like any of the characters, and while I was initially okay with Kirit, I proceeded to dislike her more and more and more until the end of the book, where I was just like, you are an idiot, I hate reading about you. This is just whiny and self-centered, and she makes so many dumb mistakes, and all of her successes come from sheer blind luck and this inexplicable I am so good at everything that I do because of my parents kind of thing. Like, I don't care about, no, that wasn't very well explained. I'm devolving into not being able to talk well about this, so we're gonna stop there. I didn't really like this book. It could have been a lot better if it hadn't been so predictable. I was surprised actually that it has such a boring plot when the world building was really so imaginative. Go figure. The next book that I finished was Use of Weapons by Iain M. Banks, one of his culture novels, which is a science fiction series. I'm going to make a separate video of what I said about this book actually, because it takes a while to explain the convoluted plot and structure of this book and kind of what it did at the end that hit me so hard. But suffice it to say here, I really enjoyed this book, even though it did some kind of disgusting things that disturbed me. It was excellently written and put together, and I'm going to be thinking about that ending and that twist for some time, but I will go into all that more in a separate video. After that, I finished The 13th Tale by Diane Setterfield. What I love about this book is the atmosphere. It feels like a modern day gothic novel, I guess. It's got a great mystery in it. It's about twins and a lot of lost mothers and abandoned children and a house that's falling apart. And yeah, so many secrets that I did not see coming. Even though I've read it before, I've forgotten all the twists and turns in this book. The basic setup is that a young woman named Margaret Lee is invited by a world-famous author named Vida Winter to come to her on her sickbed, basically, and write her one real, true biography. Vida Winter has spent all of her professional life lying about who she is and where she came from and her origin story, and now that she is close to death, she feels compelled to finally tell her story. Margaret goes to stay with Vida, and every day she learns a bit more of this story and tries to unravel the mysteries of who is really who and what happened to some of these people. I think going into the mysteries of the story blind is probably a great idea. This is a story also for people who love books, who have surrounded themselves with books from an early age, who know what it feels like to remember being so deeply engaged in literature and stories as a child and as an adult. That's something that I was talking to my friend Rachel about a lot. We just both were like, oh, we see so much of ourselves in Margaret and how she talks about her relationship with books. It was really beautiful. I didn't give this a perfect rating on Goodreads though, because the ending felt a little too drawn out. There was actually a chapter, like 4 chapters from the end, that I thought was the end, and then it kept going, and then it kept going. And at a certain point, I just wanted it to end. I didn't need to know stuff about what happened to Judith and the gardener and everything. I just thought it should have ended when you found out the answers. That's my only complaint about this book. And last but not least, I read The Rise of Endymion by Dan Simmons, the 4th and final book in the Hyperion Cantos series, and because it is the 4th book in the series and the last book when all the answers are given to you, I don't want to spoil anything, so I will say I love this book. I just loved all the answers. I'm really impressed at how many things Simmons had to lay the groundwork for back in the first book. You know, he thought everything out really well and addressed all sorts of loose ends and questions that I had that I genuinely thought he wasn't going to answer. Like, there are just a lot of things in many series that don't get answered, and so I was really impressed that so many of my questions were answered by the end. I would say that this series as a whole, but especially in the last 2 books, is about people trying to stop humanity from evolutionarily stagnating, building up to this one event which will wake people up and make them fight back against being oppressed by many forces in the universe that they didn't even know were keeping humanity from being all that it could be. Humanity is kind of stuck in this rut of never moving forward, always rehashing what we've done in the past. A great example, of course, that's pointed out in the Rise of Endymion is that many of the planets that are so lovingly described in this series, many of these cultures, like the planet of Tian Shan, all these religions and cultures and the architecture of buildings and everything, they're all copies. After hundreds of years after leaving Earth and Earth being destroyed, humanity is still stuck rehashing all of this old stuff instead of making something new. There's no reason why we shouldn't be making something new, but we're not. And why? Why are we still stuck in the past? Why won't we go forward? All the reasons for why that hasn't happened are explained in this series. I loved all of this. This has a little bit of everything. It has poetry. One of the major characters in the series is actually based on Keats, and his poetry figures into the story. The Hyperion Cantos themselves is an epic length poem being written by one of the characters, and it's also quoted frequently in the story. There are philosophical discussions, there are scientific discussions, there's a lot of stuff about evolution, and it's wonderful. I recommend this to people who really love science fiction and all of these other things as well. And with that, I think I'm actually verging on fangirl status today, so we'll leave it at that. I don't have much more to say this week, so let me know how your weekend has been. I've really been enjoying mine, and I'll be back to talk to you guys again soon. I really need to start filming some of my end of year videos, and I'm having a really hard time picking favorites this year. Is anybody else having this problem? I've read a lot of good stuff and I can't narrow down my list, and I'm not exactly sure what to say, but I will attempt to do so in the not so distant future. And until then, bye.